We have talked about a structure called as thalamus. Thalamus में हमने ये देखा कि this is concerned with sensory function, motor function, and also to some extent with limbic functions. Today we will talk about one more structure which is present below the thalamus, which is called as the hypothalamus. Right? So hypothalamus you have already studied in endocrine system. So this is the master organ or master of the endocrine orchestra. It is described as that because all forms of endocrine functions are controlled from the hypothalamus at the highest level. So here we will talk about the other aspects, other functions of hypothalamus. We will not go into the endocrine functions. So we will focus on the neural and homeostatic aspects of hypothalamus. So first we will see what are the different groups of nuclei. So just like the thalamus, here also we have lots of nuclear groups. Second, we'll see the functions, and in today's class, we'll talk about one function in detail, that is the effect of feeding behavior on hypothalamus. So, to begin with, hypothalamus is an organ which controls our instincts, right? Instincts both in the form of some neural signals and also in the form of endocrine signals. And location wise, because it is present just below the thalamus. So this is the hypothalamus, this is the pituitary hypothalamus, and here you have the thalamus. So it is situated between the endocrine and the neural points of concurrence. So responses from the hypothalamus is an integration of both the hormonal and the neural circuits. Second important aspect is this. Hypothalamus is also the point of concurrence between energy balance and stress response circuits. तो ये दोनों functions भी बहुत important हैं, right? These are all concerned with basic function. Energy balance, we usually do not have a choice. You have to maintain balance of energy or metabolism. So that circuit, and stress is also something you cannot avoid. So how the body copes with stress. So two very unique points of concurrence. So one between endocrine and neural, and the second one, stress response and energy balance के साथ जो circuit है, it is a point of concurrence of both. And there are extensive interconnections between the hypothalamus and all other regions of the brain. You will see this in the coming slides. Broadly, here we have 4 groups, right? So here I have not given you the names of the individual nuclei. These are the broad groups. So I am highlighting the functions, important functions of each of these groups. Preoptic, supraoptic. So these groups, optic comes from the word optic chiasma. So in relation to that. So preoptic group is concerned with 2 important functions, temperature regulation and sleep wakefulness. Supraoptic, which is present just above the optic chiasma. So here we have the endocrine role. So this controls the posterior pituitary. So as you all know, the posterior pituitary is actually not secreting any hormones. It is releasing the hormones which were initially secreted from the hypothalamic neurons. You have read about 2 sets of neurons, magnocellular and parvocellular neurons. So axons carry the secretions to the posterior pituitary, from which upon stimulation their secretions are released into the bloodstream. Supraoptic is also concerned with energy balance functions and a very unique thing, circadian synchronization. So what is that? We'll talk about this. Tuberal group is concerned with feeding behavior and reproductive behavior. Again, thermoregulation and sleep wakefulness. And mammillary body, it is concerned with emotions. So 4 groups and their basic functions. So this is it seems like a very complicated diagram. So this shows you the different nuclei, individual nuclei in the broad nuclear groups. So this is the third ventricle. So this is the medial and the lateral aspects of the hypothalamus. If you take an anteroposterior view now, so this is the anterior aspect and this is the posterior aspects of the hypothalamus, right? So one important thing I would like to highlight here is the location of arcuate nucleus. So arcuate nucleus is situated on close proximity of the third ventricle, ensuring that it is close to both the flow of CSF and the blood. So The location of arcuate nucleus is important. We'll see the coming slides. So again, this is a coronal view, right? So anterior group and the posterior group. So try to focus on the important groups. So you have an anterior nucleus and the posterior nucleus, right? We have a medial and a lateral group. So this is the medial view. So medial may again ventral and dorsal aspects. So this is the ventromedial and this is the dorsomedial. Similarly, you would also have one lateral hypothalamic area. This one, lateral hypothalamus, right? We also have infundibular nucleus or the arcuate nucleus, which is this yellow streak that you see here, right? Preoptic area is this. So broadly, it gives you the location of the different nuclei. Now the functions. So you have already got some of the functions from the previous slides. So let us take one by one each of this. We will not talk of the endocrine because that has already been covered. The thermoregulation means maintenance of temperature of the body, right? Temperature maintenance occurs by a negative feedback mechanism. So what is a negative feedback? Whatever response that is produced is in negative feedback is a correction of the initial stimulus. So if there is a decrease in the stimulus, the response will be increasing it back to the expected normal level. So for explaining thermoregulation, we usually have a model called a set point model. Body has a normal range of a temperature set point. There are neurons, we have talked about these neurons which can detect temperature, right? Lateral spinothalamic tract, we have seen there are neurons which can detect temperature. So thermoregulatory mechanism, we have this peripheral neurons and we also have some central neurons in the CNS which also respond to temperature. All of this go to the preoptic area of the hypothalamus. So this is the sensor of the temperature regulating mechanism. So here the preoptic area has its own set point, so 37.1 degrees Celsius. So periphery se and central part se jo incoming signal aa raha, right? You will detect that and accordingly deliver a correction signal if there is a mismatch. So if the incoming temperature is less, it will activate the posterior hypothalamus, which is the heat gain center. If the incoming temperature is more, it will activate the anterior hypothalamus, which is the heat loss center. Once these two groups are activated, of course in different situations, ek saath to nahi honge, so they have their own set of effector mechanisms. Say like posterior hypothalamus, if it is activated, it increases the activity of the sympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic system, if it is more active, it increases thermogenesis throughout the body, right? It also causes a shivering response. Shivering is a contraction of the skeletal muscles of the body, involuntary contraction, which produces heat. Because as all of you know that muscle contraction is an exothermic process. Anterior hypothalamus, if it is activated, it will produce effector responses concerned with heat loss, like vasodilation. So vasodilation ensures from the core of the body it is lost to the peripheries. So as the blood goes from the core to the peripheries, it carries away heat in the form of convection currents, from which heat is given out at the form of radiation. It also increases the activity of the sweat glands. So all of this. More about the process of thermoregulation will be taken up in a separate class. So there is a competency on this. So it will be taken up later in details. Okay. So can you just answer why appetite increases in winters? Does it increase in winter? Appetite? Right. You feel like eating more fried, तला हुआ खाने का बहुत मन करता है winters में. Right? Why? Try to find out the answer and give me. Right? So answer lies in the hypothalamus. Okay. Now 2 important things before we move to the mechanism of feeding. Right? So there are 2 important processes that happen: energy expenditure, energy intake. Expenditure of energy happens through basal metabolism. Right? A basal metabolic rate, to maintain that some amount of energy is always spent. Right? Most of the energy is actually spent on that. In addition to this, on certain situations like exercise, you will again spend more energy, right? So expenditure of energy is a continuous process. So most all functions of the body requires ATP. So this ATP comes from energy. But refilling of the energy happens only when you eat, right? So refilling is a discontinuous process. So you'll see most of the mechanisms that regulate feeding actually can influence this process, the process of refilling. Most of the mechanisms. Eating is a behavior which seeks food, right? And this is the single biggest behavior which has shaped evolution. So from your aquatic and forms of life to terrestrial forms. Terrestrial forms may be survival of the fittest. So all of these concepts are all stem from the basic need to have food. Now, what is the difference between appetite and hunger? Is it the same or is there a difference? Appetite and hunger एक ही चीज़ है. It sure sounds like same, but is there a difference? What is the difference? Right now, if you think of say some form of pastry, या pizza, या some form of fish, so some of you might feel hungry, but that is actually not hunger, that is appetite. So appetite is a pleasant desire to seek food, right? And our past experiences, food preferences, emotional experiences associated with food intake, all of this influence appetite. Pleasant desire to seek food. At around 1 p.m., the food seeking behavior that you feel, that is hunger. So hunger is a compulsive desire to seek food. Appetite is a pleasant desire to seek food. Right? So slight differences there. Now food feeding behavior is regulated by both central mechanisms and peripheral mechanisms. Central mechanisms there is a role of hypothalamus, brainstem centers, like again you see NTS. So wherever you go, it is like the Vodafone dog which will always follow you. NTS is something you cannot avoid in physiology. It's always there. Then in addition, you have some reward centers, right? So these are the central mechanisms. So hypothalamus you have certain centers which control appetite. And in addition, hypothalamus also secretes a lot of neurohormones and neuropeptides which also influence behavior. I'll come to this in a bit. Brainstem centers NTS is the relay center for a lot of incoming signals or peripheral signals, like it is a relay center for the taste pathway. So taste can influence your feeding, right? NTS is also the relay center, or it also receives efferents about distension of the stomach after you eat. So vagal efferents also go to the NTS. NTS is a center because of its relay function controls our feeding behavior. Reward centers. So this is NA means nucleus accumbens, OFC means orbitofrontal cortex, and amygdala, all of you have heard about it, concerned with emotions and some form of memory. Now reward centers, if you take a food and you feel happy, right? So reward centers participate in this process which make you feel happy after eating a certain food. And when you feel happy after eating a certain food, it is also encrypted in your memory in some way. So past experiences of a good food or a good taste greatly influences your feeding behavior. So reward circuit of the brain participates in this process. So these are the three central mechanisms: hypothalamus, brainstem centers, and the reward circuit. Peripheral signals you have certain long-term signals and short-term signals. Body weight कैसा है, right? So this is a long-term signal. Body weight cannot be influenced on a day-to-day basis or an hour-to-hour basis. It is a long-term cumulative thing. So body weight is influenced by the activity of insulin, right? So insulin is one hormone which plays a role in long-term regulation of body weight, and it is also important satiety signal. What is the satiety now? Satiety is the sense of satisfaction that you have after eating food. So satiety is a signal which ends or terminates feeding behavior, right? Leptin is a hormone which is secreted from adipose tissue, adipocytes. So that's why these two hormones are long-term satiety signals. Here what you see in short term, you will see all of them are in black except for ghrelin. So ghrelin is the only hormone which increases food intake, right? All others participate in some way in inducing a sense of satiety. Satiety, as I said, is a sense of satisfaction after feeding. And all of these are short term. They are released from meal to meal. So regulation of food intake both by central and peripheral mechanisms. Peripheral mechanisms act through the hypothalamic centers, right? So peripheral mechanisms may usually have hormones, some of them long term, some of them short term. Ghrelin is the only major hormone which increases feeding. All others induce satiety. Let us now look at the centers of the hypothalamus. Here what is important in this diagram, I told of long term and short term. So long term reservoir is adipose tissue, right? So this is leptin, as you can see, it is acting on the hypothalamus. Short term reservoir of food or energy in the body comes from the liver and functions or release of nutrients from the liver, glucose from the liver, or storage of glucose in the form of glycogen. All of this is influenced by insulin. So insulin can act as a short term signal, and also because insulin also in the long term regulates body weight by deposition of adipose tissue, right? So this also can act as a long term peripheral signal. Ghrelin is a hormone which is released from the stomach meal to meal basis, and it acts on the hypothalamus and also in the NTS. Sense of stretch from the stomach, it is carried by the vagus back to the NTS, right? And these are all different forms of gut hormones. Peptide YY, OXM is oxyntomodulin, GLP and GIP. So these are incretins, again concerned with insulin release. So these are also acting finally on the hypothalamus. So hedonic inputs which you see here, these are the ones which concerned with reward, preferences. Now what is this diagram? So set of experiments on mice, right? So they found that leptin deficiency mein, this is what happens. This is the effect of leptin deficiency or a leptin receptor deficiency. So leptin is a satiety signal, remember. So if leptin is less in the body, or if suppose leptin is present but the receptor is mutated, it cannot act and induce satiety. So over a period of time you will have accumulation of more and more adipose tissue, right? So this is a famous experiment that was done when it was first discovered. Now hypothalamic centers, initially a two-center model was proposed, right? Feeding center and satiety center. Feeding center is on the lateral hypothalamus and satiety center on the ventromedial hypothalamus. But this two-center model was very simplistic. It was oversimplistic. Why? Because food intake is also associated with energy expenditure. So your two-center model does not explain anything about energy expenditure. It just tells about feeding behavior only. And it also does not explain multiple neuronal areas, the multiple neuropeptides which are there. So two-center model is now obsolete, right? So what we now have is a lot of other additional centers. And the present accepted model है, arcuate nucleus is the central figure in the present model of satiety. Why arcuate nucleus? Because of its location just close to the median eminence. Arcuate nucleus का location एक ऐसा जगह पे है by which it can regularly come in contact with the blood, And when it comes in contact with the blood, it can sample the blood for levels of glucose, for levels of leptin and all of this. तो जितने peripheral signals है, central figure should be able to come in contact with that. Only then corrective responses can be generated. So this is the role of arcuate nucleus. There are two sets of neurons which are actually present. One set of neuron is orexigenic neurons, which increases food intake. You have neuropeptide Y and agouti related protein, right? Other set of neurons is anorexigenic neurons. They express CART. What is CART? Cocaine amphetamine related transcript, and pro-opiomelanocortin, POMC. So this set of neurons, wherever they project in the brain, their action is always to reduce food intake, anorexigenic neurons. This is the central figure. In addition to this, we have paraventricular nucleus, which inhibits food intake. I will try to recall, paraventricular nucleus also is concerned with secretion of CRH, corticotropin releasing hormone, TRH, thyrotropin releasing hormone, and vasopressin, all of which are catabolic, right? So what happens during stress? Appetite reduces, right, during stress. This is a common experience. When you are under stress, you don't feel like eating. So you can actually correlate both of these experiences. CRH is a hormone which increases during stress, and so is this paraventricular nucleus. This becomes active, it inhibits food intake. Dorsomedial nucleus can have a dual effect, but the major effect is stimulatory. And food anticipatory entrainment. What is this? You know it by your common experience or daily experience since your childhood when you are supposed to expect food, right? तो उसके basis पे adjusting the other physiological functions of the body, this is called as food anticipatory entrainment. The other area is prefrontal area, which also stimulates food intake. So this is an important picture. You take a picture of this. It integrates both the hypothalamic and the brainstem signals, and also the central and the peripheral signals. So this is arcuate nucleus, as I had said. So arcuate nucleus mein you have this MPY, which is a orexigenic neuron. So this increases food intake. As you can see, there is, as I said at the beginning, that energy balance and intake and expenditure there is a balance. When we are eating, so the balance shifts in this side, right? It tilts towards the feeding side. So neurons from here, they project onto lateral hypothalamic area, prefrontal area, and they act through Y1, Y5 receptors and increases food intake. At the same time, neurons arising from here also inhibit the VMN and paraventricular nucleus, right? तो इनका जो function था, you can see energy increasing or food increasing neurons, they inhibit the opposite set of neurons. So it is increasing, it is inhibiting the activity of POMC. It is also inhibiting the activity of the further sites in the same pathway, that is ventromedial and paraventricular nucleus, which are catabolic hormones. So hypothalamic level where this is the circuit which is there. But if you look at the peripheral signals, ghrelin is the only one which is increasing the activity of NPY, neuropeptide Y. Baki jitne hormones hai, these are all inhibiting, you can see, the activity of this orexigenic neurons. Leptin and insulin are also inhibiting the activity. So that's why all of these are satiety signals. They increase the activity of this anorexigenic group and suppress the activity of this group. What do you find here? MTS ka role dekhiye, it is concerned with feeding, gastric emptying and metabolic rate. So vagal efferents convey this signal. This picture is about the different set of neuropeptides which are there. So pehle hum hypothalamus mein, when I started, I told you that in feeding behavior, hypothalamus has a role in being having the centers, and दूसरा function hypothalamus का, it is releasing or it is secreting a lot of neuropeptides. So these are the set of neuropeptides which increase food intake, and these are the set of ones which reduce food intake. Okay. One point you can see here is, like we've already talked about, this endocannabinoid system. So this system is a set of neurochemicals which are structurally similar to cannabis. So if you ever see a patient of cannabis addiction, you'll see they're always hungry throughout the time, right? Because of this structural resemblance. So external cannabis can also increase food intake. Now, the various theories of food intake, glucostat theory, which says that when there is hypoglycemia, these are feeding centers, right? This is the glucostat theory, and this is dependent on insulin. Right? Dusra theory, lipostat theory. Lipostat theory says that more the amount of body fat, it gives a feedback to the hypothalamus to reduce feeding. So this is mediated by leptin. Third theory is gut peptide theory, which tries to put the role of different gut peptides like ghrelin, peptide YY, oxyntomodulin, and all of this. And thermostat theory, which says that whenever there is a fall in the core temperature of our body, feeding behavior is stimulated. Because when we eat, you must have read about thermogenic effect of feeding in biochemistry, or specific dynamic action, same is easy. So, right? So this is the reason of the preference, as I said at some slides back. In winter, we like to eat food more. This is the reason. So these theories are proposed at different points of time. So no theory can explain the totality of feeding behavior in isolation. तो सारे चीज़ें एक साथ मिलके they are regulating feeding behavior. Next, an important function of hypothalamus is circadian synchronization. Now, body has got rhythmicity, right? At different functions have rhythmicity at different intervals. Like yesterday we talked about, I give an example of an alternate nostril breathing. So even nasal airflow, right, is more through one nostril at one point of time, and lesser, relatively lesser to the other nostril. So there is a cycle. This is an ultradian cycle. Ultradian means it is a hour to hour cycle, right? 1 to 2 hours basis पे this cycle keeps on changing. इसके पीछे reason क्या? This is because of the fluctuation between sympathetic and parasympathetic tone in the blood vessels of the nasal mucosa. Similarly, you have lot of other hormonal rhythmic fluctuations. You have already read about the rhythmic fluctuations in hormones. Corticosteroids or cortisol, there is a diurnal cycle, right? Similarly, smooth muscle tone, be it in the bronchi or the blood vessels, there is again a diurnal fluctuation. So these fluctuations actually mean कि 24 घंटे में जो cycle है, there are times where the parameters vary in a predicted manner. Cortisol का एक ही point of time पे there is a daily peak. Testosterone का then at some same point of time there is a daily peak. So this type of rhythmicity or fluctuations. Now, all of this is mediated by rhythmicity is in the body is mediated by the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is called as the master biological clock. And why is this? Because out of all of this different fluctuations, we need certain forms of stimulus to reset the cycles. So this stimulus are called as Zeitgebers, right? And light is considered to be the strongest such cue. There can be some other cues also, like exercise can be one cue, movement is one form of cue, but all of this, light is the strongest cue out of all of this. So that's why the importance of suprachiasmatic nucleus of hypothalamus. So here you have some afferents and efferents. Let us see the diagram. So from the retina, the sensation of light is conveyed via the ganglion cells of the retina, right? So optic tract से it goes eventually to the optic occipital lobe. The ones concerned with circadian synchronization, they go through a separate set of ganglion cells. जो normal ganglion cells, they don't go through that. There is a separate set of fibers, we call them as the retinohypothalamic tract. So they reach the suprachiasmatic nucleus here. From the suprachiasmatic nucleus, effector responses are generated and it is conveyed to the pineal gland to release melatonin. It is also conveyed to the superior cervical ganglion to bring about some activity in the synchronization in the sympathetic nervous system, right? It is also going to some other nuclei associated with sleep and wakefulness like VLPO. So this is all happening within the hypothalamus. So 24-hour का जो cycle है, right? It is to be adjusted in such a way that our body's function is optimal for day environment, right? And optimal for night environment. Say if your metabolism is lesser in the daytime, it is evolutionarily not suited because in day it is expected that you move about. Develop कैसे होता है ये चीज़ें क्योंकि डे टाइम में it is always expected that you look around for food, right? तो present society में चलो feeding is something which is taken care of. You need not go and hunt around for food. But these are ways in which all of this have developed. So this type of synchronization is called as entrainment. कि जिस environment में body में जो functions होने चाहिए, the body adjusts its function according to that with the help of suprachiasmatic nucleus. So this process is called as entrainment. Right. Sleep and wakefulness में क्या role है? So first thing that you just learned is the circadian rhythm for sleep and wakefulness. तो hypothalamus का एक role तो यही है. Apart from this, there are two important nuclei in the hypothalamus which are concerned with wakefulness. T-mammillary nucleus. This is a nucleus where neurons secrete histamine. This increases the activity of reticular activating system, the system concerned with arousal. Lateral hypothalamus also releases one hormone called as orexin. So feeding behavior, this is also hormone which increases feeding or hunger. This augments the activity of reticular activating system. So in your sleep, when all functions of the body are reduced to a great extent, your conscious experience is cut off from the body when you are sleeping. But if you feel hungry, your sleep is also disrupted, right? You can see orexin is a common point here. Orexin is a neuropeptide which is increasing hunger and also increasing the activity of reticular activating system. T-mammillary nucleus secretes histamine. So whenever you take, I'm just trying to give some common examples. Cough syrups, right, for which has antihistaminics. Older generation cough syrups. Benadryl for one example. Chlorpheniramine based syrups. Brilintus. So which comes from the name of Brilintus. So chlorpheniramine, dihydropheniramine, which all of these groups of chemicals which are first generation antihistaminics, they also induce a lot of sleep, right? This is because you can see histamine is a mediator in the arousal system. So when histamine activity is reduced, so you will have sleep. Sleep में एक और, so this was about wakefulness. Now let's talk of sleep. So hypothalamus also is concerned with sleep. How? Once sleep has been initiated, sleep initiate कैसे होता है, I'll talk about in a later class. Once sleep has been initiated, this neuron, ventrolateral preoptic area, VLPO, this neuron start firing. So hypothalamus में एक ऐसा area है which has neurons which start firing during sleep. What is the function of this? So this, as you can see, it is projecting all these different groups of neurons in the reticular formation. So reticular formation, this is not a single structure. It has got lot of such nuclear groups जिनका एक function है arousal. They have got lot of other functions, but the common function of all of this group of neurons is arousal. So you can see the red color projections. Once VLP neurons start firing, they inhibit the activity of all of this by secreting inhibitory transmitters. So sleep में there are two things. One is initiation of sleep, and the second aspect is once initiated, it has to be maintained for around 6-7 hours. This is the normal physiology of the body. Maintenance is done by hypothalamus through this VLPU nucleus, and this model is called as flip-flop switch model. Okay, control of autonomic functions. So hypothalamus is considered as the head ganglion of the autonomic nervous system. So sympathetic and parasympathetic you have learnt. एक time and again ये discussion बार-बार आया है. But sympathetic and parasympathetic themselves are under the control of hypothalamus. So sympathetic responses are also seen when lateral hypothalamic and posterior hypothalamic patterns nucleus are stimulated. Same pattern of physiological and behavioral responses are seen. So this is the two sites which controls the activity of sympathetic nervous system. Parasympathetic type of activities are seen when there is stimulation of anterior hypothalamic nucleus. Now regulation of water balance, right? Thirst. Now water balance is actually maintained by two set of stimulus. The first stimulus is osmolarity and the second one is blood volume. तो blood volume के बारे में I need not talk more. You have read about this in CVS when you learned about hypovolemic shock. तो जब blood loss होता है या there is a loss of ECF, extracellular fluid, how the body responds you already know. You have read about this in hypovolemic shock. You have also read about renal regulation of fluid and water, right? So I'll touch upon these points, but in context of hypothalamus. Now, osmolarity जो एक stimulus है, this happens when the intracellular fluid volume is reduced. So ICF triggers osmolarity more as a stimulus for drinking. Now there are osmoreceptors in the anterior hypothalamus and the tip of the third ventricle. So two areas where there are osmoreceptors. So when we say osmolarity, what does this mean? So these are receptors which can detect the shrinkage of cell size. So osmolarity means in the same, say the number of osmoles or osmotically active particles in a given volume of the solution or solvent. So ICF may, whenever there is osmolarity increase, what does this mean? The number of osmotically active particles is more now. And you know that when a cell is placed in a hypertonic solution, what happens to that cell? It shrinks in size or swells in size. When you place a cell in a hypertonic solution, it shrinks in size. So osmoreceptors are kind of mechanoreceptors which respond to this, right? So whenever there is increase in osmolarity of the body, osmoreceptors जो कि hypothalamus and third ventricle में है, they shrink in size, right? And this acts as a trigger for the response. So even if there is a 1% rise in osmolarity, it can respond to that. What is the response? Now this stimulates the anterior cingulate cortex. So this is the cingulate cortex and the hypothalamic thirst centers. So thirst centers में there are two things, OVLT and SFO, right? OVLT is an acronym for organum vasculosum of lamina terminalis and SFO is acronym for subphonical organ. So hypothalamus में पहले there were some receptors. These receptors become active or start firing when there is a shrinkage in their size consequent to increase in osmolarity. So when there is this firing, the output or behavior is affected by these two nuclei, organum OVLT and SFO and the cingulate cortex. So these three centers together stimulate one person to drink water. And for whenever you drink, say, a glass of water, we need around 20 minutes of time for that amount of water to be absorbed in the circulation, restore the osmolarity of the ECF first, and then ECF में osmolarity जब maintain होगा, only then the ICF will be normal, right? So you need around 20 minute to 25 minute time for that response to be effective. दूसरा जो effect है hypovolemia. So this is a repetition. So hypovolemia, it is detected by the baroreceptors, volume receptors. So here I am talking of the volume receptors in the right atrium. So once it is detected, so there is increased central sympathetic outflow, increased activity of the renin-angiotensin system through the kidneys, aldosterone, and there is reabsorption of sodium and water from the proximal convoluted tubule, PCT, of the nephron. For this mechanism to act, you need around 10% change to be there. So why is osmolarity a more important or a more common or a earlier trigger? Because osmolarity में अगर 1% भी change है, that there is a mechanism which responds to that. However, for volume to be a trigger for a thirst, you need around 10% change in the volume to activate the effector responses, either through ADH, the mechanism through the kidneys, or the mechanism through the cardiovascular system, the baroreceptor system. Role of hypothalamus in emotions, right? So you can see some nuclei I've mentioned over here. So in all of this, if तो ये experiments में, animal based experiments में, when electrical stimulation of different groups of nucleus was done, different types of behavioral pattern was seen, and on the basis of this conclusions were drawn. Ventromedial nucleus concerned with reward and peace, dorsomedial with agitated behavior. Lateral hypothalamic area, aggressive behavior, rage reaction, right? Preoptic nucleus governs our sexual behavior, and periventricular nucleus is concerned with fear. तो ये हो गए centers, जो कि individual centers को there is a certain type of behavioral response that is there. Apart from this, I talked about the Pepys circuit in the last class. So this is a circuit concerned with genesis of emotions and to a great extent memory. So you can see hypothalamus is an important part of this circuit, right? So is thalamus. So thalamus and hypothalamus both take part in this circuit. So hypothalamus receives input from the amygdala and conveys it further to the thalamus through the mammillothalamic tract. More about this circuit when you talk of physiology of emotions. Sexual dimorphism. So what is that? So of course there are some aspects of our sexual behavior which we attribute to our reproductive organs, right? So male reproductive system has got its some set of functions, starting from gametogenesis, अलग है दोनों में males and females, right? Secondary sexual characteristics are also different, right, in both males and females. So that is attributed to a set of different organs. Reproductive organs दोनों में अलग है, so that's why these functions are different. But some functions which are not mediated strictly through the reproductive organs, but yet we find some patterns of difference, right? The behavioral aspect of mating, right? Then you see parental care and also to an extent sexual orientation, right? All of this variations that we see in behavior, broadly we refer to them as sexual dimorphism. And the nuclei which is concerned with that is ventromedial nucleus, medial preoptic area, and arcuate nucleus. So I am just giving you the broad picture. In each of these three nuclei, there are multiple sub-neuronal projections. Plenty of transcription factors in some small subsets of neurons in these neuron groups are identified now, which is attributed to these forms of dimorphism. Okay. Now this is the last slide. So why should you know about hypothalamus, right? So hypothalamic obesity, right? So you know now from the discussion why this is important. Leptin related diseases, leptin resistance is an important form of obesity, and at the same thing, if you're somehow able to develop medicines or drugs which can act on the hypothalamic receptors, neuropeptide Y receptors or melanocortin receptors, we can influence the feeding, and to a great extent we can develop certain forms of medicines for morbid obesity. Obesity may most of the times the intervention that we advise for is lifestyle modification, and sometimes you go for bariatric surgery. But hypothalamus may, if we directly target the centers which control feeding behavior, increase and decrease, we can devise some sort of drugs. So lot of such drugs we can see, especially melanocortin receptor agonists. They are in pipeline. In the coming few years it will be in the market, right? Eating disorders which we attribute to all of this hypothalamic systems is, one of them is anorexia nervosa. Reduced satiety associated with the reward pathways. Cancer, cachexia, cancer patients may, loss of appetite is a very common complaint. It is both a symptom and a sign in patients of cancer. Why? Because pro-inflammatory cytokines which are expressed by these neoplastic cells, they induce satiety and activate anorexigenic pathways. So जो orexigenic या feeding pathways है, so they are all inhibited because of this cytokines. So remember, cachexia, any cancer patient you will find, those advanced stages of cancer, there is reduced appetite. This state is called as cachexia. And neurogenic diabetic insipidus. So what is diabetic insipidus? Anyone? Low level of ADH or vasopressin. So that condition can arise when the secreting cells are somehow affected or receptors. So if it is the secreting cells in the hypothalamus, we call this neurogenic. If it is the receptors in the nephron, we call this nephrogenic diabetic inhibitors, right? So here we'll stop today. So tomorrow we'll talk about some higher functions like speech and language, right? Thank you.